Hello, and welcome back to the Emotional Abuse Recovery Podcast. I'm your host, Allison Dagny, and I am back with another episode today to talk a little bit about self-worth. And the reason I wanted to bring this to light today is because I hear this so much with clients who come to me to recover from narcissistic abuse, emotional abuse, toxic relationships, and the one thing that is often said is, I'm not good enough. Now, we're going to talk about this in this episode because when we have this feeling of low self-worth or not good enough, right? That's really just the tip of the iceberg. I want to get into the weeds on this. I want to help you uncover what it is that makes you feel not good enough so that you can start to shift that. So if you're someone who has said this to yourself, to other people, have written it in a journal, who just really resonates with this feeling of not being good enough, then stay tuned because this episode is for you. Welcome to the Emotional Abuse Recovery Podcast, a podcast specifically designed to help you heal after a toxic or narcissistic relationship. This podcast teaches you to use your subconscious mind to go from feeling stuck to set free. In here, you will learn how to use the power of your own mind to free yourself from emotional pain, move forward with confidence, and experience the inner peace you deserve in your healing journey after emotional abuse. I'm your host and subconscious reprogramming coach, Allison Dagny. So let's get started. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to bring up today is that I used to feel this way too. I used to feel not good enough. And let me tell you, being with someone for 20 years who made me feel like I couldn't do anything right, I would never be good enough, I could never reach their expectations, that is something that could have really, really harmed me for the long term. Now, because I am where I am now, because I have the tools that I have, because of the work and the practice that I've put into changing that, I am not, by any stretch, feeling not good enough. But I'm here to tell you that if you are feeling that way and you're listening to this just wishing, like, I wish I could feel good enough, or I wish I could have self-confidence, or I wish I could stand up to people without feeling guilty or afraid, right? That is possible for you because I was so different from the person that I am today. I am no longer recognizable even to myself when I think about the things that person in the past, that past version of myself, put up with. I actually cringe sometimes thinking about the things that I did, the things that I didn't do, the ways that I behaved and didn't behave in my past that was a reflection of my own low level of self-worth and self-love. And if you've seen any of my reels on Instagram or my stories, that I'm not there anymore. I'm not that person. And I truly, truly, deeply love the person that I am now. And I actually also love the person that I used to be. And that might sound weird to you because you might be like, well, how could you love that person that you used to be? But I'm here to tell you that person deserves love too, because that person is who got me to where I am today. That person is the one who never gave up. That person is the one who kept clawing her way back and trying so hard, right? So how could I dislike or hate that old version of me? Now, when I was that old version of me, I disliked her and I hated her at that moment in time. But fast forward to the version that I am now, and I can look back with empathy. I can look back with compassion and gratitude and love, right? Because I'm looking from a different lens now. So that's going to be important for you too, to start making the shift not only in how you think, but in how you perceive yourself now, yourself in a future version of you, yourself in the past version of you even. So we're not just going to be looking at the way we think of things, because that's what I do, right? And that's really important, but also let's put on a different lens. Let's put on a different perspective. How could we see the different versions of ourselves in ways that we've never seen them before? And that's going to be really important for us to help us heal. So let's dive into this. Let's start with deconstructing this broad statement of I'm not good enough. I think that's going to be really important because, again, this is something I hear all the time. And one of the very first things that we do in my coaching program, my one-on-one coaching program, is we work on self-love and self-worth. So I'm going to hear things like, I'm not good enough, and I'll never be good enough, or I wasn't good enough, right? But I want to actually break this down and figure out what this actually means. So when I'm speaking with a client and they say that they're not good enough, I want to know more. And so here's where, if you have a pen and paper, I would really encourage you to get that out and take some notes. So just write that. If you believe that somewhere in your subconscious mind that I'm not good enough, I believed it for myself for years, and lots of other people believe it just exactly the way that I did, and maybe you are too. So when you write down I'm not good enough on your paper, ask yourself, why are you not good enough? What specifically makes you not good enough? Now, when you do this, you should be in a pretty relaxed state. You should be pretty calm. It shouldn't be like right after a big fight with someone, or, you're just listening to this podcast and you're really highly emotional, and so you just got on here to try to listen to something to help you. No. If that's the case, I really urge you to come back to this episode at a later time and do it when you're feeling calm. I mean, you can still listen, obviously, but you don't necessarily need to do the writing aspect of this unless you're feeling relaxed. Your brain needs to be in a relaxed state to reach the subconscious mind, and that's going to be more beneficial to you if you can do it that way. So let's just say, okay, yes, I'm relaxed. Let's go. So I'm not good enough. What does that mean? Like, what specifically makes you not good enough? And then you're going to write that down. And I'm not just saying one thing. There's probably going to be a lot of things that you feel like make you not good enough. I know for me specifically, I had things coming up like I can't do anything right. I'll never be able to reach his expectations. I'm stupid. I'm careless. I'm inconsistent. I'm a bad mom. I'm a bad wife, right? These were beliefs that I had that was contributing to this broad statement of I'm not good enough. So a lot of times people will just roll with this one statement, like I'm not good enough, because of their programming, right? So if this is the first time you're listening to this podcast, programming is all the things that you've been made to believe about yourself, about society, about the world, about other people, since the day you were born up until about age 7 or 8. Little sponges we are as soon as we come out of our mother, and we're just taking in all the billions and billions of bits of information and processing that in our brains and developing that into our personality and what we believe, right? So that's why you could have somebody who believes something totally different than somebody else, right? Why does one person have certain types of political beliefs and other people have different ones? Because of how they've been programmed, their experiences with the world, things that they've seen, how they interpret things, right? What's the meaning that they're making of it, right? So if you have these beliefs like I'm not good enough, what is specifically the reason why you believe that? So we can go all the way back to your childhood, and you could probably attribute some of that to your upbringing, right? You could probably remember sometimes that you felt not good enough from your caregivers or at school, or if you were bullied, or if you were rejected by a friend or a little, high school boyfriend or something like that, right? Anything that made you feel not good enough, what specifically are you attributing to that statement? And so that's where I think it'd be really, really helpful to just write it out. Just write out all the things. And here's another key piece of this. You can't be judging yourself, right? So here's what I mean by that. If you're writing down, I am so stupid, right? But let's say that you graduated high school with honors, you graduated college, you have other continuing education degrees, and logically you know that you're a very smart person, right? So if you write I'm so stupid, or you're about to, and you think, well, I know I'm not stupid, so I'm not going to actually put that down. I still want you to put it down, because if it's in your subconscious mind, it's fair game, right? So if it comes up and if you hear it or if you think it, then it's probably in the subconscious and needs to be addressed, right? So when I say don't judge it, I mean don't just ignore it and wash it away, because your conscious brain might come in and say, no, that's not actually true. You're pretty smart. You're smart, right? That's what your conscious brain does. But again, if you've not heard this podcast before, maybe you have, we'll just recap. 95% of what you think and believe and how you behave is driven by the subconscious mind, right? The stuff that you maybe aren't fully aware of that's running the show in the background, right? But your conscious brain only runs 5%. So if you're dismissing, because your conscious brain logically knows that you're smart, right? If you're dismissing that thought, you're not going to be able to help yourself, because the conscious brain might still be churning that belief that I'm so stupid, or I was dumb, or I'm an idiot, or whatever, right? So that's what I mean when I say don't dismiss it. You don't want to just sweep it under the rug because your conscious brain comes in and says, oh, no. That's actually not true. Another way that people will judge themselves when they're doing this kind of work is if, let's say, they think it's a thought they shouldn't be thinking, right? For instance, if they said, I'm not good enough, and then let's say that the reason that you believed that you weren't good enough was because your partner cheated on you or your partner abused you, right? So a lot of people have this association that if I was good enough, then I wouldn't have been cheated on, or I wouldn't have been abused, or I wouldn't have been yelled at, or this wouldn't have happened to me if I was good enough, right? So the association here in this kind of example is that your worth is determined directly based on how someone treats you, right? And not only are we saying I'm not good enough, but then we're actually taking it a step further, and we're saying that our worth is determined by someone else's behavior and actions, right? So if someone was really kind to me and nice to me, then that means I am good enough, right? But if someone is not treating me good, that means I'm not good enough. But let me just ask you this. If I feel a lot of self-worth right now in this current state that I am in, and I do, right? I love myself. I'm very confident. I'm very happy. I feel peace pretty much all the time, unless something major happens and I have to work through that, obviously. However, because I'm human, my kind of baseline is peace and love and self-worth. But let's say I went out somewhere, let's say to the store, and a person starts yelling and screaming at me because I took their parking spot and I didn't realize it, right? Does that mean I'm not a worthy person? No, that doesn't take away my worth just because somebody treated me bad. Now, let's say the opposite thing happens. I pull into a parking lot and I give someone the spot. And they come to me and they're like, oh, you're so nice. Thank you so much. You're so kind, blah, blah, blah. Does that mean my worth is better now? Absolutely not. My worth is not determined based on other people's behavior, either good or bad. Okay? And I think that's where a lot of people get confused, is they assign their personal value to the behavior of the people around them. And that is very backwards, because your worth is always inside of you, no matter what, right? So you don't have to earn your worth. as a human being. You don't have to do something to be worthy. And a lot of people have been brought up to believe that you do. But I want to ask you this. When a newborn baby is born, what do? They eat, they sleep, they poop, they cry. Pretty much that's it, right? And they require a lot of attention and care and nurturing from their caregivers, right? But the baby isn't doing a whole lot. Really, it's really not. It's not really doing anything for the caregiver either, or anyone. But we would never say that that baby is not worthy. We would never say that that baby is not good enough. Ever, right? So just because we get older and just because we grow doesn't mean our worth now all of a sudden shifts and changes, that we have to be something in order to be worthy. But this is programming, okay? This is what happens when we are in situations, societies, environments, families, friendships. We start making it mean something about us when other people show up how they show up. But the reality is, people are always going to show up how they're going to show up. And that really does not change our innate worth and value. So, before we get into the details of this, right, because you have your paper, you wrote down I'm not good enough and all the things that you're thinking or all the reasons specifically that you believe that you're not good enough, then we want to unpack that, right? We want to look at those things specifically. And the work that I'm in and the things that I do is all about shifting your perspective, changing how you look at things, changing how you think about things, and considering other possibilities. Because when we get stuck in these like thinking patterns or habits of one way, that's what often keeps us in pain and suffering. That's what makes us believe that we're not good enough, right? So I can tell you you're good enough until you're blue in the face. And I can tell you my little example about the newborn baby. And you might be like, oh, yeah. But if you don't have that in your subconscious mind, it won't matter. You won't believe it and you'll never believe it. But if you start to make these shifts and you start to actually explore this on a deeper level, right? If you're listening here and you want emotional abuse recovery, then take these steps and start figuring it out what specifically is going on inside of you, right? Because nobody can do this for you. I can come on here on this podcast and talk for 30 minutes, and if you do nothing with it, you do nothing with it, right? And I can only give you the information. Obviously, I can't do the work for you. And it's the same with my clients when they come to me, right? I'm the guide. I will give you the tools. I will tell you how to use this 4-step process to start rewiring your subconscious mind to make your new automatic an automatic of self-love, an automatic of self-worth and confidence, right? And security inside of who you are. But I can't force you to do the work. I can't force you to put pen to paper. I can't make you do anything, and I can't make my clients do it. So I'm just here to help you along the way. And yes, I encourage my clients and support them and give them everything that they need and all the support. However, again, it's up to them. It's up to them to put in the practice, just like if you were to be working out with a trainer. You know, the trainer's going to tell you to do the work throughout the week. But if you're only meeting with your trainer on Saturdays, chances are you're not going to see a lot of improvement or a lot of change in your physique. And it's the same thing with this. It's the same thing with anything, right? If you're learning how to drive, if you're learning how to ride a bike, if you're learning how to speak a new language, right? You have to practice. You can't just go meet with the teacher once a week and expect to have changes. All right, so let's break this down to some, common things, right? Because you might write some down, but I can give you some additional ones that I've heard before that might be helpful for you, that might spark some more thoughts inside of your mind. So I already mentioned, I can't do anything right. I don't deserve happiness. I'm a failure. I'll never be successful. No one will ever love me. I'm not, and you insert the word smart, talented, attractive, right? I'm a burden to other people, or I'll never be good at XYZ, and you fill in the blank. I'm not worthy of love, or I'm not worthy of good treatment, or I'm not worthy of respect. I'll never be happy, right? These are just common, deep-seated beliefs that create self-doubt and a really negative self-perception, right? Because if you believe these things, like the things that I just rattled off and other things, how do you think you're going to show up in the world? You're going to be very insecure. You're not going to be able to speak your mind. You're going to have trouble standing up for yourself and other people. You will doubt yourself and your decisions. You might not be able to make decisions. And so if we shift these thoughts, and a lot of people are probably thinking like, how do you do that? Well, I'm going to give you some tips and tools on how to do that. Now, you probably already know this. However, it's really, I think, important to highlight some of the negative aspects that result from a low self-esteem, low self-worth, that sort of thing. Obviously, you're going to feel insecure, but it can also impact your relationships negatively. You may, because you have such self-doubt, have a lot of fear of trying new things or putting yourself out there. And you might miss out on a lot in that regard. There may be a fear of judgment that people will judge you, so you might avoid situations, people, opportunities. A lot of times people who have low self-esteem really find it hard to cope with challenging events in life because they already believe things are going to be hopeless. And you may participate in harmful behaviors like drugs, alcohol, eating disorders, bad habits and things like that, because if you don't feel that you're good enough in order to take care of yourself, you may avoid self-care. And like even self-harm types of behaviors like physical harm and things like that. So, it's so important to have a really stable sense of self-worth. And if this has been broken down from years and years of your childhood or inside of a narcissistic relationship or emotional abuse or toxicity or something like that, which is very, very common, right, then you are going to have to take control of rebuilding that, because nobody else is going to do it for you. Not the person who hurt you, not the people who broke it down. They're not going to put the pieces back together. That's going to be your responsibility. And I know a lot of people say, well, that's not fair because they did this to me and I shouldn't have to. However, what if we switch that to I get to, right? I get to rebuild this. I get to make myself feel better. Nobody else has the control or the power to continue to make me feel this bad about myself, right? So we can actually take back our power by shifting just that part. Like, I get to do this for myself. This is so important to what we're going to do next as far as like shifting this negative self-talk, these limiting beliefs, because it really, really will change your life. It will help you personally grow. It will help you in your relationships, and it will help you just in an overall sense of well-being and, general sense of peace in who you are as a person, right? Because when you love yourself and when you feel worthy, you accept you for who you are, and you're not hinging your worth on what other people think, or are they going to love me, or will I be rejected? Do I have to do this in order to keep somebody around, right? That is the old way of thinking that we need to shift out of to start to feel the way that we want to feel and feel confident and feel secure. So let's start here with shifting the perspectives and challenging the negative self-talk. So when you look at that paper, and on your paper you see some of those beliefs that you wrote down, like maybe one of them was, I'm a failure. And this is a common one too, like that goes into I'm not good enough. I'm a failure is also a little bit general. you can get more specific into that even, right? So it's just asking yourself the questions. Well, why do I think I'm a failure? Why do I think that I'm not good enough, right? And just make sure that you are the one getting into the weeds and figuring out what it is that you believe, because everyone's belief system is going to be different. If I said I'm not good enough to one person and said why, and then I asked another person why, they're probably going to have different beliefs. There are very common things that come up. However, when you get specific, it's going to be very unique to you. All right, so the first thing that you can do when you are trying to challenge the negative self-talk is, one, now you have a list, right? But two, catch yourself in the moment. So practice when you feel that emotion come up, where you feel really low about yourself, or you feel really embarrassed, or you feel shameful, or you feel stupid, or whatever it is, right? That's your indicator that something is going on in your subconscious mind. Your emotions don't just come out of nowhere, right? A lot of people think they do. I used to think they do, or they did, and I know now that's not true. Your subconscious beliefs, when they are not aligned with reality or what you believe should be happening or how you believe people should be acting, when that stuff is all disconnected, that's when you start to feel the emotion. So the emotion is literally just a signal. It's an alarm that's going off and it's saying, hey, pay attention. So here's what you do. Today, like after you're listening to this podcast, start paying attention to your emotions and how you feel, right? So when you're going about your day and you do something and you bump into somebody at the store or whatever and you feel really dumb and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm embarrassed and blah, 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 right? I'm so klutzy, I'm not good enough, right? And you start feeling that way. Pay attention to the thinking, because the thinking is what's creating it, not the action that you took and not the emotions just popping out of nowhere. It's the thoughts. I shouldn't have done that. This is a problem. I'm so careless, right? All the thinking is actually what's creating that, because if you didn't have those thoughts, you wouldn't be feeling that way. Okay? So just start, that's number one, start paying attention to how you feel. You have to get into your body. You might even physically be able to pinpoint, it's in my chest, it's in my gut, it's in my throat, it's in my face got flush, my hands get tingly, right? Try to really hone in on where it is in your body, and once you identify it, then you can say, okay, what are the thoughts behind this? What am I thinking about when this happened? Now, if you're out and about somewhere, you're obviously not going to be able to get out a piece of paper and write it down. You might get your phone out and just kind of make a little note in your phone about what happened so you can come back to it. Or if you do have specific things you were thinking, you could pop that in your phone, unless you do have like a little notepad and it's convenient to be able to write that down. Now, when you go into this, it's really important to be compassionate and gentle with yourself, because if you are with a friend and that friend did something that may have been embarrassing or made them feel silly or stupid or not good enough, right? And that person was, feeling inadequate about whatever the situation was or themselves, chances are you're not going to say to them, yeah, you're so dumb, and yeah, you messed up, and yeah, you should think about things differently. Like your chances are, maybe you're the kind of person that can be open and honest with your friend, and that's fine, and maybe they appreciate that, and I have no problems with that. However, chances are you're not talking to your friend the way that you're talking to yourself. You're not beating up other people emotionally in your mind like to them how you would do to yourself. So think about the way that you speak to yourself and the things that you think about yourself, and how you wouldn't treat someone you loved that way. So why are you treating yourself that way? Again, because this is actually part of the process, right? This is action. Because it's one thing to be able to recognize the emotion and then think about what the thinking is behind it. But it's another thing to act loving to yourself, right? So if you are saying, well, yeah, maybe I'm not so stupid, or, and you're considering the alternative possibilities, that's wonderful. But if you're actually not talking to yourself nicely, you're not treating yourself nicely, you're not doing loving things for yourself, you're not thinking loving thoughts about yourself, well, every part of your body is listening and paying attention. So it really doesn't matter what work that you do, what coach you're with, what therapist is helping you. If you're not acting loving to yourself, then your brain is taking note of that. Because you've heard the phrase, actions speak louder than words, and they absolutely do. If you're taking care of yourself and talking nice to yourself and doing these things for yourself, that in itself reinforces new beliefs about you and your level of worthiness, right? Because if you're taking care of yourself and you're loving yourself, then that must mean that you're worthy. That must mean that you are good enough, right? There's a cause and effect here. I do this for myself, that means I care about myself. I talk this way to myself, that means I love myself. It's just reality. If you're saying things to yourself negatively and telling yourself that you're not good enough and that you're not stupid, or that you're stupid and that you're never going to do anything right and you're a burden to everybody, if you're repeating all these things to yourself and not acting in loving ways, then how do you think you're going to feel? Not worthy. Okay, so there's one other piece to this that I want to talk about, and then I'm going to recap, but the dangers of this idea of perfectionism. Perfectionism, well, I should say it like this. Perfect isn't real, okay? Nothing is perfect. Perfect is a perception, and anyone can perceive something to be any way they choose. So if I perceive something to be perfect, someone else could perceive it to be imperfect, right? So this idea of I need to be perfect or I need to do things perfectly is actually just an illusion. And most people don't even realize that they are perfectionists. Like most people who have low self-worth and feelings of unworthiness are perfectionistic. Because all that it means is that you are trying to live up to a standard of something that either you've determined needs to be at a certain way or someone else has. But the reality is, perfect doesn't exist, and neither does failure. That's for another episode as well. However, those two things, perfection and failure, aren't real. What is real is realistic goals, achievable goals, things that make sense and that are logical. But this idea of, I have to be perfect or things need to be perfect, that will contribute to feelings of low self-worth, because if you're not reaching that level and you're constantly striving for it, you're always going to feel like a failure, or you're always going to feel like you're not good enough, right? So it's really important to identify that the labels that we use and the things that we say can often have a very, very tragic impact on our own self-worth. So just to recap on these things, like how you do this. Number one is feel the emotion in your body and then think about what are the thoughts that are coming up with that, and being compassionate with yourself, right? Instead of judging yourself, like actually be compassionate about what's going on in your mind, and stopping this idea of perfectionism and like shifting it to realistic expectations or goals or things that are, manageable for your life instead of trying to reach something that is unachievable. Okay, so I want to share a quick analogy with you about a mirror that has been intentionally distorted, right? And it gives this kind of warped, inaccurate reflection of you when you look in the mirror. So the distorted mirror actually is a representation of the negative beliefs and self-perceptions that you hold about yourself. So when you have this mindset of I'm not good enough and look into that metaphorical mirror, what you're doing is you're seeing a version of yourself that's flawed, that's inadequate, unworthy, that's not good enough, right? The distortion could even exaggerate some of these things or these flaws and diminish the positive aspects or attributes that you really truly have. So the key in this analogy with the mirror is to realize that the mirror can be adjusted. So in the context of personal growth and shifting your beliefs and your mindset, adjusting the mirror means actively challenging and changing those negative self-perceptions, because you have the ability to adjust the mirror, right? Some people think, well, it is the way it is. No, you actually have the capability to change and adjust what you see in the mirror, okay? So when you recognize that these are mental distortions, right, that are contributing to how you view yourself, that gives you power. So some of these distortions would be things like, black and white thinking, right? Or all or nothing, or overgeneralization. And what happens then is you filter out the positive and you go straight for, well, this must be the case because I'm just not good enough. And here's all the reasons why, right? And then somehow your brain pushes away all the positive things because, again, your brain wants to believe whatever you tell it and it wants to be right. So if you're telling your brain you're not good enough and showing it all the negative, it's going to roll with that. It's going to be like, okay, well, this is what you told me, so I'm going to go with that. But if you tell it something different, then it will go with that, okay? So you have the choice and you have the power. So when you actually can start, shifting the way you think and restructuring your mindset, this is like adjusting the mirror. The distortions in the mirror, it starts to make things straight. It starts to make things clear. You can actually see them for what they are instead of looking at this distorted version of what you've been believing about yourself. And that's because of your programming, because what other people made you believe about yourself and your worth. So by challenging these negative thoughts, these limiting beliefs, you actually are looking at evidence, right? The evidence would be things like, well, wait a second, maybe I am smart. Let me look at times that I was smart, right? Or I can't do anything right. Well, let me look at times that I did do things right. When did I do things right? Here's some evidence, okay? This replaces those distorted beliefs with a balanced perspective of who you truly are. So you'll then start to gradually see this distortion straighten out and reflect an accurate view of who you truly are. So once that mirror starts getting adjusted, then you can see the reality. Then you can see yourself for who you truly are. And this really involves some, looking at and acknowledging your strengths, your achievements, your positive qualities and attributes that might have been distorted or overshadowed by this alternate perception that you've been carrying your whole life. So the ultimate goal really is to be compassionate with yourself. How would you treat a child who's been bullied and beat down by, emotionally by people their whole life? How would you treat them? Would you say, no, look at what you did. Look at your beautiful art project. Look at what you did on the playground. Look how you helped that little boy when he fell down. Like you would show that child all the evidence that shows that they are good enough, but you're not doing it for you. So you have to start doing it for yourself as well. So instead of focusing on all these flaws, then what you do is you start to learn and appreciate and embrace your uniqueness and your worth. Because now you've shown your mind, you've looked at the evidence. You say, oh yeah, that is true. I did do that. And oh yeah, I was good enough. And look at all the things I did in my marriage and in my relationships and how I've helped people and all the things that I value and how I embody those things. That is where the distortion starts to shift. So you have the power to do that. Nobody can do it for you. you've got to take some action, and you've got to actually start thinking about where that evidence is that disproves those distorted views of yourself, right? So this is an ongoing thing, again, right? Because the mirror may need to be adjusted periodically, okay? There may be things that happen to you that start creating that self-doubt, and it starts to creep up again. So this is a process of self-reflection. It's a process of shifting your mindset, and that is an ongoing process. The good news is it often becomes way easier. Just like anything that you do, it becomes automatic. So when your negative thinking starts shifting to a different kind of thinking, then that becomes a practiced habit, and then it becomes more automatic for you, which is great because then you don't have to consciously think about it all the time, because again, your brain wants to make life easier for you, and it wants things to be automated. So if positive thoughts about yourself, the way you talk to yourself, the beliefs that you have, and the things that you're, rewiring in your subconscious mind are good, eventually that's going to become your baseline, just like it is mine. So regularly practicing this stuff and restructuring your thoughts and giving yourself that compassion really helps maintain the clearer, more positive self-image, and it's not going to be that distorted mirror anymore. It's really important for you to understand also that, yes, this is ongoing, and this is also a journey, right? So your personal growth is not something that is just going to flip overnight. And it didn't flip overnight for me either. It was something I worked at step by step. Like I often use an analogy of building a house, right? Like you're putting a brick on and another brick on and another brick on. Like you're not just like snapping your fingers and you have a house built. No, we are actually creating something amazing and beautiful. And maybe as I create that house, it's an ongoing process. Maybe I put an addition on here, or maybe I add something new over here, right? It's creating this beautiful version of who you are. So it's not just like, oh, I'm going to build the house and then I'm done either. No, we have to maintain the house. We have to make sure that we patch holes or that we do repairs, and you are that house, okay? So this is really important to know that yes, you can get there and build that house, but I'm still a work in progress too. Like I'm still building on my self-worth every single day. It's not something that I just flipped a switch and then now I'm just love myself. No, like that's why the work that I do with my clients is a 12-week program, because we have to practice this. I can't just get on a call with you in one session and have you flip your entire mindset, right? No, this takes work and practice in between. And that brings me to a reminder that I have about my 3-day Thriver event that's coming up on January 24th, 25th, and 28th. It's at 7 p.m. on the 24th, that's a Wednesday, and the 25th, that's a Thursday, 7 p.m. on those 2 days on Eastern Standard Time. And then on Sunday, it's at 3 p.m. So I've done this event before. It's called Shift Happens. I like plays on words like that. But the reason why I'm doing it again is because I'm sharing information with you, educating you, bringing fun, bringing joy. We're doing things that are not just like, oh, here, let's just learn this stuff and then be done. No, I want it to be enjoyable for you. I don't want you to come to 3 days or 1 day or 2 days of my event and just feel like, wow, that was a complete waste of time. Even though it's free, right? My time is very valuable to me. And so I want it to make your time valuable with me. So if you are interested in coming to this, I would love to have you. I've got free seats available. You just have to go on to my website and get yours, or you can just go to the bottom here in the show notes and then you can click the link and you can sign up for free. If you don't come live or you can't make it to the Zoom, then you can just get the replays, because I'll just put them up on my website for you later. So or if you know somebody who'd like to come, then you can invite them as well. The more the merrier. And I will just tell you, like when I did this event once back in, I want to say it was March of last year. And then I completely shifted to doing it a different way back in October. And the difference was I let the real me shine through. That when I did it in March, it was, I'm not saying it wasn't me, but it was just more structured and more, informative and educational and professional. And like, I'm not saying that I'm not professional, but like, I am silly, I am goofy, I am full of like energy and joy. And so I decided I'm gonna be that on my event. So I did it back in October, and if you missed that one, you can come to the one in January this month. So it was just in a couple of weeks from the time that this episode is airing, because I want to show you what's possible for your life after emotional abuse, after narcissistic abuse, because I know this is the one thing that I know about you, and I have never even met you. Well, some of you maybe I have, but chances are I've got a lot of listeners on this podcast. I've not met you. But one thing I know about you already is that you have an amazing, bright, shining light inside of you. And maybe that light has been snuffed out. But if you've been abused by someone or you've been hurt by a narcissist, they saw that light. They saw it and they wanted it for themselves. So they came in and tried to snuff it out. I don't know if it was your parents. I don't know if it was a partner. I don't know if it was a coworker, but somebody recognized that light inside of you and wanted to snuff it out. And guess what? I'm here to let that light shine, and I will help you do that. You come to my 3-day event, and we're going to have fun, and we're going to learn, and we're going to bring joy back in, right? Because that's not cool. We don't want people taking that away from us, because that's what we bring to the world. And that light was almost completely burned out inside of me until I escaped my abusive relationship and decided no more. I'm not letting anybody take that away from me. And so now I'm here to help you so that we can let that light shine again and bring that joy back into your life so that you can share it with the world. Okay, before we wrap up, I wanted to just share with you a quick story that a client and I were talking about the other day, because she was feeling unworthy. She was feeling not good enough. And I remember saying to her about how when someone goes missing, or if someone is in an accident or they're hurt, how the rescue team or the fire, ambulance, police, or whatever, they do not wait and call up their family and friends and say, is this person worthy? Should we save them? Should we rescue them? Should we go look for them? And I remember a light bulb went on for her, because she said, oh, you're right. She said, because my own, I think it was her father, was an EMT or fire. And she said he put his life on the line for other people in his job, and he didn't even know them. He didn't know if they were good people. He didn't know if they were bad people. He just knew that their life was worth something. So I just wanted to give you that as a thought to take with you, because when you start to recognize that humanity is worthy, right? You are worthy. We can't take that away from ourselves when other people, right, are even saving and rescuing people. They have no idea. They're not filling out applications or looking at their resumes saying, is this person good enough? Is this person worthy of saving? They just do it. They just save them. And you are no different. Your behavior does not dictate your worth, whether it's good behavior or bad behavior. Okay? That might be difficult for some people to hear, but it's a reality. Because guess what? None of us are perfect. None of us have been good 100% of the time. None of us have been bad 100% of the time. Okay? So thinking of it in terms of, we are worthy. You are worthy. I am worthy, right? And we're worthy of being treated well. We're worthy of healthy and happy relationships. We're worthy of goodness and abundance and all the things. We just have to be able to see it inside of ourselves. And that's what I help with. So I hope you'll come to my event on the 24th, 25th, and 28th of January. If you can't make it, or if you'd rather not, you just want to chat with me, you can apply for an application to have a free call with me to see if this is the right fit for you. And you can get that link in the show notes as well. So here's to believing in you. I really truly do believe in you. And I know that with practice, with effort, and with the right tools, you can absolutely change your life. Talk to you next week. Thank you for being here with me today in the Emotional Abuse Recovery Podcast. I hope you found value here with me. If this podcast episode was helpful to you, I'd love for you to hit subscribe and leave me a review. My goal is to help you go from feeling stuck to set free. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook, and you can check out whentearsleavescars.com for more resources and information to help you with your own emotional abuse recovery. Until next time, here's to believing in